Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the OB Broadcast episode 14. This week for you, I have the interview with Doyle from Doyle's Customs. Supposed to have it up last week. I apologize for that. There was a scheduling error. But hey, I hope you enjoy. Do let me know. The biggest thing that I did differently in this interview, as opposed to ones I've done previously on the radio show, is that I really made the effort to write and ask questions that gave the guest a really good opportunity to discuss, at length what they do, how they do it, and why. And I think especially with this particular guest, Doyle, because he was, so knowledgeable about what he does and clearly very passionate, he had a lot to say. It was a lot of fun interviewing him, and I'll be back next week with your regularly scheduled podcast. All right, so why don't we start with the fact that, very obviously you create these really beautiful controllers, shelves, covers. How exactly did you fall into this particular artistic profession?
It's a long story of how I actually got to where this is what I do now. Because initially I went to college to pursue art, and what I did was I got a bachelor in fine arts.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to find a job straight up being an artist. I mean, there's not a whole lot. It's just not a very applicable thing right out of college. So I ended up going back to school and learning how to paint cars. And because I figured I could get some kind of I could get into it. I was really interested in doing restorations. I'd built a couple of cars with my dad. And so in that mix, I went back and I learned how to paint using automotive paint and how to do restorations. So I learned a whole nother side of how to apply material. And I already had an art background. So I just ended up mixing the two. And a friend of mine, this guy, Custom NES Guy, asked me he saw some of my stuff, and he asked me to do a couple of custom Nintendos. And that's really where it started, is I did a couple of Nintendos for him, and then it just kind of spawned into this huge thing, the Doyle's Customs thing.
Is there actually a big difference between the paint that you're using now and automotive paint?
No, what I do is I prep all my surfaces the way I would prep it for a car or
Right.
for a motorcycle, for a vehicle. I prep it that way and then paint it. I do it like I would do a custom motorcycle job or a hood or, anything for a vehicle.
So you've obviously done, medium-sized scale with things like cars and bikes. And obviously at the moment you're doing much smaller scale. Have you ever pushed it to like a larger scale with things like, murals and big paintings like that?
I've done a fire truck before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and what I did was we painted the fire truck, it was standard red fire truck. And then I went back and I prepped the surface that I was going to do artwork for. And then I did my artwork, and then we rolled it back into the booth, and I clear coated and did everything that you have to do to, make it look professional. And so that's probably the biggest thing I've done as a fire truck.
And what was the particular artwork for that one? Because that's a fire truck's not the most common thing to do a custom art job on.
It's not. And maybe you're familiar with the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy.
I have heard of it. I've not watched it.
Yeah. Well, in that movie, they're lost out in the I guess out in the plains, and they're trying to start a fire. But every time they start a fire, this rhino comes and stomps the fire out because it doesn't want the brush to catch on fire.
Right.
And so what I did was I designed a rhino that had a fire coat on. So that's what I did was I made this kind of mascot that was a rhino stomping out a fire with all the firefighter gear on.
That's awesome. Firefighting is such like a serious profession, so it's nice to bring a bit of levity to it.
Yeah. A lot of those guys, unless they're doing something that is like rescue or, something that's really serious, most of the time they like to have fun and goof off.
No, who doesn't? I understand that you airbrush. That's how you do all of your painting at the moment. So
I do.
For those who, like myself, don't really know much about airbrushing, is it all freehand or do you sort of use a type of stencil? How exactly does airbrushing work?
There is a mixture of things. One thing I do is I set up templates. So I go on my computer and I kind of map out the order that I'm going to do everything. So what I'll do is I'll set up how I want the artwork to be and what I need to block out and where I'm going to paint. So I make all these layers and I go through and I don't know how to explain it exactly, but what I'll do is I'll make a stencil, like a basic stencil of where I need something to be.
Right.
And then I go in, I do coloring and shading, and then I go back and I'm like, all right, now I need to add this color and I need these parts to be blocked out. So I'll make a template to block out an area, and I go in and I do my shading and my coloring and anything else I need to do. And what happens is at the end of it, once I've done all my layers, you have an end product. You have whatever the artwork needs to be.
Why exactly would you airbrush over other methods of painting?
It's just the way I learned how to apply artwork. Really, the only thing I know how to do well is use an airbrush. I mean, there are other methods. You can use vinyl, and I guess you could hydro dip, but both of those, unless they're clear coated over, they can scrape off easy. Well, I guess the airbrush could scrape off easy too. The thing with like with the vinyl or skin is what most people call it. It's already thick, and so if I airbrush, the layer is going to be thinner than a trash bag. The artwork will be. So when I clear coat it, it doesn't have a high build. But if I put vinyl on something, then the build of it's going to be incredibly high. It just keeps the bulk down.
Right, so you get like a nice flush coat, or a nice flush product. Okay, so I believe you said that this is sort of what you do, right? Is this a full-time gig for you?
It is now. I used to work at a sign shop for a while, and I had so many. Whenever the Switch came out, right. And I did a Super Nintendo themed Switch, and when I did that, it just kind of changed everything as far as business wise. So yeah, it's what I've done for the last couple of years. It's what I've done full time.
It's awesome. Do you see this as like something that you can do sustainably long term, or are you sort of just enjoying it while you can?
The key to doing something long term is being able to be flexible. Right. So I know how to paint many things, and I know how to I used to make signs, and I know how to do a bunch of different things. So if I need to change to fit whatever the market is or its marketability, then I don't think that would ever be a problem. But I mean, I've had orders since 2013. It's just right now I've had enough orders that I could feasibly live off of it and not have to worry about doing anything else.
No, that's crazy. 2013, that's a long time. Would you ever want to expand Doyle's Customs? So say maybe have a brick and mortar store with some employees, or could you ever see yourself moving somewhere, doing artwork for like a big company like Nintendo or Sony?
I would love the opportunity to do artwork for like a big company like that, Nintendo, Microsoft, or Sony. I'd love to find my way into that. I don't know that they would take me on because I have to have a shop to do it the way I do it. But if they wanted to outsource to me or whatever, I wouldn't really know how they would use me, but I would love to do that. However, I have talked about opening up another shop. I used to have a shop before, and I closed it to have just my workshop. But I have thought about opening up another shop, not necessarily a storefront style shop, but a shop to do all my work out of.
Okay. Now, do you think that, because obviously all the artwork that you do, it's all like physical stuff that you can hold. But now we're seeing a lot more artists doing digital sort of stuff. Do you think there's always going to be a place for physical art, or do you think, digital might slowly phase out the competition?
I use my computer to set up the artwork, so I understand where the role is for digital artwork. I don't think as far as completely phasing out airbrush, it may phase out some aspects of it, but the physical aspect of it, like having the controller or something to hold, people are always going to want that. So even a painter that paints, on a canvas, on maybe an 8x10 canvas or whatever, there's always going to be somebody that wants that. You can't just have digital media, because people want the things that they decorate their home with, or they, put in their yard, or however they want to see physical media. So there's no way that digital media could take over all physical form of art.
Right, and I think yours has just an added longevity, just because everything you make is, unless I'm wrong, it's all completely usable. It's not just for decoration. Anything that you produce, you can, play, hold, use, right?
That's correct. Every controller and console that I've done, because of the way I clear coat it has a hard shell clear coat on it, so it doesn't ever feel sticky or it doesn't. You would be hard pressed to really mess it up. You'd have to drop it on something like a hard floor, almost like a concrete floor, because it's got the same finish as a vehicle, so it's pretty durable.
Just speaking of clear coat, was there a lot of a testing process to try and figure out what sort of protective coating was going to A, look good, and B, withstand the hours and hours of use your items are going to get? Or
Well, I was lucky in the fact that my friend Jared, the custom NES guy, he had already found out that like the Nintendos that he was doing, he found out that they would hold the automotive paint really well. And so when he came to me, he was like, "Dude, this it's easy to do when you know how to use this equipment. This is all you have to do." And so, I mean, I screwed up like maybe 3 or 4 Nintendo shells before I got it the way I wanted it to be, but it wasn't, because I already had so much practice using all the equipment. Translating it wasn't that difficult to me.
now you mentioned that you went to art school. You,
Mm-hmm.
you studied fine art, but did you have an artistic background, like further back, say as a child? Were you very arty back then?
Yeah, well, I was in the art club in high school, and I always knew that I would be an artist somehow. First time I knew that I wanted to be an artist was probably in the 2nd grade, and so yeah, it's been something that I've pretty much done all my life, is some kind of artwork.
Right, and you can obviously produce something very, very detailed. So with all of the Switch cases, you're great at reproducing a logo, a character, a style of some sort. But do you ever create your own designs, your own characters, that sort of thing?
I do, I actually now I'm working on a couple of different things that where people have seen some stuff that I've designed for myself. Like I don't know if you've looked at much of my Instagram, but I did like this fluorescent orange hexagon trapper keeper pattern.
Yes.
And so there was a guy that liked that a lot, but he wanted it in different colors. So right now I'm doing a set for him that's that same kind of idea, that same like 90s design, but it's just different colors. And I like doing my own designs, and I want to do more of those, but most people, they already have something that they like out of Nintendo. So I try to pull art for them, like for each person, what they want to see on their casing or their controller. And that's why usually I end up using a lot of like the Nintendo characters and popular things that people like, anime characters or whatever. It mostly has to do with that's what this person wants to see on their item, and so that's usually how that all ends up being. But yeah, I love doing my own designs and putting that on my own personal stuff.
Right, it's always curious because someone can be a very talented artist. They can really put the brush strokes or the lines there and make something look beautiful, but they can't always just come up with it. They're not always creative. So it's always interesting to ask. For someone wanting to do something artistic, would you recommend getting into, the custom shells, covers, switches, consoles? Or do you think this is a particularly difficult market to break into for someone up and coming in the art world?
It really depends on where you want to get into it. You can, like, to break into it, you have to know that your craft, like your sense of craftsmanship, needs to be really good. And because that's the way something looks on a computer or on your phone can look good, but once someone's got it in their hands, they're going to see any mistake that you have going on. And that's what anyone that's trying to get into it, make sure that your craftsmanship is top notch first before you start trying to make money off of it. But yeah, it's definitely something fun to do, and it's always a good feeling to create artwork that someone's going to be holding and looking at.
Okay.
And using.
Right, well, let's get a little more into your craft. So obviously you do, cases, backing plates, shells, controllers, consoles, anything, majority, games consoles and stuff, but anything like that, you sort of, bring to life with a new coat of paint, because a lot of the ones that you buy from the store, they're just flat colors and they're not very artistic. So what's the average time frame for a piece of work that you're working on?
It takes me, I think I can complete, if you add up all the time, there's a lot of wait time in it, but I think I'd probably log about anywhere from 6 to 8 hours on a typical controller.
And have you had any pieces in particular that have been more difficult in terms of, either character design or maybe shapes? So, I don't know, the Switch backplate, for example, is pretty flat, but something like, I don't know, maybe an NES, it's got some ridges and stuff. Do those sorts of shapes give you any issues?
So they can be a nightmare sometimes. The one thing I don't like painting is PlayStation controllers because there's not much surface.
Right.
So yeah, it plays a big factor. The Nintendo Switch, that backplate is a dream because it's flat. And so yeah, I would rather paint a Nintendo Switch backplate over a PlayStation controller any day of the week.
Oh well, it's convenient that the Switch is such an awesome console.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different things that you can do. There's so many things to draw from to make, and that flat back plate just makes it a perfect thing to do artwork on.
And I guess because the controllers connect, but then also detach, I guess you have some sort of freedom with like mixing and matching different controllers, right?
Yeah, it's pretty fun the things that you can do because you have the Switch it's already kind of fun in the fact that you got all these moving parts, and yet that makes it even more engaging to be able to do the controllers in a way that kind of complements it, like the Kirby. You've seen the Kirby Switch set that I've done.
Yes, I have. It's just incredible.
Yeah, well, so it's nice that you can make the back plate look like this fun Kirby's inhaling the Nintendo Switch logo. You can have that, and then the Joy-Cons can look like Kirby when you hold them together. And then when they're on there, they look like bookends to this, the Kirby image. And so I like that idea of having it to where they can be an art piece separate, and then when you put them on, they bookend the artwork that's in the middle. I can make it to where if the artwork needs to run off the back plate onto the Joy-Cons, I can make it that way or whatever. A lot of times I like for people, if they've got these ambitious ideas like that, they want something that flows completely across, or they want these certain things to happen. I always encourage anyone that I'm doing artwork for to please spitball your ideas, because the both of us can come up with an even more interesting idea if you've got something that you've already got in mind. So yeah, I mean, it's infinite possibilities for the layout that you want.
I guess it's always good when an artist is willing to brainstorm your idea to try and get it to that next level, to something that you're really, really happy with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right, now I have, I did a bit of extensive research on all of your social medias, and I noticed that you do primarily games consoles and shells and stuff, but you're not limited to it. I noticed at one point you did a sort of a tumbler cup. I believe it's a Captain America one.
Yeah. I used to do a few tumblers.
Are they difficult to work with just because it's that, completely round shape?
Well, the roundness of it isn't the most difficult part. The fact that they're stainless steel, it takes a lot of prep work to get stainless steel to hold paint. And so not that I shy away from them, but I try to explain to people, look, it's gonna take some work to make this happen, because stainless steel, first, when it comes from the factory, it's been there's some type of oil or something they use when they polish it, so you have to get all that off.
Right.
And so you've got to clean it, and then you've got to sand it down and spray it with etching. There's this stuff called etching primer, and what etching primer does is it makes the metal, except that the primer sticks to the metal. I guess it has an acid in it that bites onto it, so that because paint won't just stick to it. And so this etching primer will make it to where the paint will stick to it. So you have all these things going on before you even put paint to the tumbler. And so yeah, I'll do them, but I try not to do them.
Okay. The majority of your pieces come from these like really huge franchises. So, Star Wars, Mario, Friday the 13th, Pokemon, all that sort of stuff. Have you ever had any issues from those companies about selling your work online?
Well, the one thing that I do try to do is if there's something that any of those companies are already producing, like if Star Wars if they were making Nintendo Switch controllers, then I wouldn't dare mess with trying to make whatever I'm making look like what they're making. I know that would, I forget what they call it, but it's like I'm trying to pass off what I have as what is theirs.
Right.
So I would leave it alone. For the most part, I haven't had anyone mess with me about it. I try to change the colors or change the artwork just a little bit, so it is different. If I get messaged or anything, I will, stop. I leave it alone. I'm not really sure what they would have an issue. I mean, it'd be like someone getting a tattoo, I guess. because I've already bought the controller. I'm not trying to pass it off. It's like the Pikachu thing. I wouldn't mess with the Pikachu Eevee. I wouldn't try to make my Switch look like that set, because then I would be competing with what they're putting out.
Right, that's fair enough.
But then again, I guess I'm buying the controller, so I don't really know.
Oh, well, I mean, it sounds like you haven't had any problems thus far, and hopefully you don't in the future, because, especially Nintendo, they can be really hard with their properties online.
If I was doing something that I guess was taking money out of their hands, I could see where they would want to come after me, but I'm not. Everything is paid for. I buy all the stuff.
Right.
All the Joy-Cons, so, I mean, at that point, I'm just painting it.
Well, I mean, all the stuff they do is, like, really flat and boring, so it's not like you're in competition.
Yeah, I could see if I was manufacturing a fake Joy-Con, and then it would be an issue, because I would be trying to make someone buy fake electronics,
right?
Or a fake Switch. But I mean, I try to liken it to the idea of like someone getting a tattoo. I mean, they own their arm and they like this artwork, so why can't you have that artwork on it?
That's fair enough. I've seen 1,000,001 Pikachu tattoos.
Yeah.
So getting more into your competition exactly. You can jump on Google and you can see lots and lots of amateurs that are trying to sell custom painted things online. Like I recently saw an old school Game Boy that had a Gengar painted on it. But sometimes, and in this particular case, the quality was just awful. So when you're buying custom painted controllers and consoles and items, what are some red flags that people should look out for?
The material that the person's using, it usually can tell you like the quality. The best thing that I could ask for someone to look at is just see if you can see on the surface anything that looks like it's gonna stick up, or like if you brush something, you're gonna have the actual brush stroke is gonna leave a texture,
right?
And so if you can see all these textures, you're gonna feel that when you're holding it. So if you want to buy it, if you're fine with having that texture on there, then that's one thing. But I mean, if you want it to have a smooth finish, if you want it to feel like the plastic, I suggest finding like me or someone like me that clear coats it to where the surface is smooth, like it should be, like if it were manufactured that way.
Are there different sort of clear coats, ones that are, the really nice quality stuff that you use, or is there maybe like a cutting corners clear coat that you should try and avoid?
There's like a lot of people spray can stuff, or we call it rattle can. And if someone's rattle canning, what's going to happen is that paint is a cheap acrylic paint, and the rattle can clear is a cheap lacquer paint, and it's going to feel sticky, and it will never not feel sticky, and it's just not a good quality paint. So what I'm using is I have a whole booth set up, and I have to use it's a 2-part clear that you have to have an account to get, and that stuff, when it dries, it's hard as a rock. So that's what the biggest difference is, and that's what you want to look for.
It's good to know that, or it's interesting to know that, the sort of stuff that you're using is, or sort of industrial grade, that you actually need to have a license to get.
You don't necessarily have to have a license. In some places you do, and you definitely have to check with who, like, if you're going to be spraying somewhere, that it needs to be something that is okay. Like here in Georgia, where I'm at, you can spray up to 2 ounces. And before 2 ounces, you have to have an evacuation, some way to evacuate that solvent, because it can be dangerous. And so, yeah, that's a big issue. A lot of people that are trying to do it just the cheap way is they're going to try to rattle can it. And it's just, I mean, not to say that that's a bad thing. If that's the only way that you can create artwork, then do it. Because first of all, if you want to be creative, but it's not going to have a professional finish. The long way of getting to it is what I just explained. But the short thing is like, do your artwork and then find somebody or a shop or somewhere that can clear coat it for you.
Okay, that's
and
good
if
advice.
You want to have a hard shell finish.
Okay, well, that's sort of the competition, right? That's what you're looking out for, red flags and positive things. So what about you, Doyle's Customs, right? What makes you different from, other Etsy stores and Instagram pages?
Mostly, I think I try to work with everybody that's wanting artwork from me. So mostly I just try to stay in contact with everyone that's buying from me. Anyone that when they want something, I try to do, if it's something that I feel comfortable doing, I try to make it more about what they're looking to have on their setup, and not like solely making something and just hoping that they buy it. Like, I would rather, if someone's got a certain Mario scene that they really like, something that's happened in the game, I would rather make that than to just Google Mario and then stick Mario on a Nintendo Switch.
No, it's good. And just, what you said earlier, about working with people and trying to brainstorm ideas and get to a different point, that really shows a difference between a lot of the other stores online. Do you have a selection of items that are just for sale, or do you only work so do you have sort of stock things that you've made and are for sale, or are they mostly, someone comes to you and you decide on what you want?
Like, I don't have any stock of controllers, so everything that someone's ordered, so, there's a lot of ordering where people order and they just order what they see, but usually people contact me and then we go from there. So
right. So, sorry, if I might clarify, what I meant by stock is like, maybe on a weekend off, you do 3 or 4 of like very similar Mario ones that aren't requested, but are just there in case people want to buy them.
Yeah, I don't keep any stock like that.
Okay.
Like, everything that I do is where someone has ordered it.
Awesome. Or have you ever collaborated? And if not, do you ever plan to do sort of either idea collaborations, or maybe, you paint a different part and then someone else, I don't know, in the case of maybe a car, puts it together?
I haven't done a collaboration recently, but I used to do a lot of collaborations with Custom NES Guy. The Ninja Turtle NES that I did.
Oh, yes.
The green one that has the Nintendo that's got the TMNT logo, and then it's got the big turtle shell. I first did that with Custom NES Guy, and so what I did was I did the artwork, and then he went and he clear coated it and he put it all together. And so yeah, I mean, I've done some with him. I've done some Mario things with him, but here recently I haven't really had anyone reach out to do a collaboration.
That's a shame, they're missing out.
Yeah, I'm picky though, because I have a certain way. This goes back to the craftsmanship. I need things to look a certain way for me to put my name on it. So I would be very picky if someone wanted to collaborate. It'd almost have to just be my way.
Well, I think that's really important. If you're, A, creating something that you're selling, and B, putting your name behind it, you want to make sure it has the highest quality. And I think it's, a great quality of yourself that you're putting yourself under that scrutiny and making sure everything's up to standard. It's very important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because you want people to look at it and think that this is the best, not to look at it and see a lot of flaws.
So what's the strangest thing you've had a request to make? Right, so controllers, consoles, but I'm curious about the weird things. Like phone cases, mugs. They're pretty tame, but what's the strangest thing you've gotten a request for?
Well, as far as painting on things, I mean, I've been asked to paint. Mostly it's just video game stuff. Now, content-wise, I've had some strange. There's one guy that was buying some stuff. He had me doing some different anime artwork for him, and then it started going down a dark road where he was wanting these weird demon and boobs, and at that point I was like, I don't know if I want to go down this road.
So definitely not PG-13.
Yeah, it was getting a little like where I don't want to have to call the cops on you, because I'm worried that someone in your neighborhood might be in danger.
Right. Okay. And how many different, if you don't mind discussing it, how many different pieces did you do for that particular person?
I think I did two controllers for him before it just kind of, the conversation died out. He started sending me images of stuff that he wanted, and I was like, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's good that you're able to put your foot down, in the face of a customer and say, hey, that's too much.
Yeah, let's keep it fun, not weird.
Right. So if someone's looking for custom designs like that previous customer was, and they browse your store and they see things like, maybe they don't recognize Fox McCloud or the SNES design, how open are you to doing design requests? So is it, really free reign of anything they come up with?
Yeah, I'm willing to do anything. I've had people before. I've had last Christmas, as a matter of fact, I had a lady that her son had designed some things and had like done some drawings or and whatnot. And so what she did was she sent me that artwork, and I figured out how to get that artwork onto an Xbox controller.
Oh, interesting.
Developed so many different tools that anything that someone brings to me, as long as it's not like I wouldn't do anything racist, and I wouldn't do anything that's fascist or so as long as it's something that I feel is like okay, as far as it's not like that, then I'll do it. I'll work with anybody.
And how comfortable are you doing things that are less from games and media and more like landscapes, photos, that sort of thing? Does that translate well with the style of airbrush that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I've put people's dogs on controllers before. I've done some wedding stuff for people before. So it really comes down to, like, I try to get people to, if they're wanting something particular like that, let's say you want a picture of your dog on a controller, then we would have to have a lot of discussions because I'd have to show you, look, this is what I know will work and this won't work. So let's work out this idea instead of you just saying, hey, I want my dog.
Right.
And then I have to figure it out.
And is it difficult with, things like that to get perspective, not perspective, to make sure everything is in proportion when you're dealing with controllers that sort of wrap around and curve?
When I make my templates, like let's say, I used to do it all by hand, and then I learned the hard way that I need to use a computer. What I'll do is I could make anywhere from 5 to, I think I've made 20 templates before, to where I would set up how I need all these colors to happen. So yeah, I can make it, and I make it proportional. I make sure that it looks right.
Right. So what is sort of your tool set? You said you have a booth, you have your airbrush or airbrushes. I imagine you have multiple. Or what else is there in your toolbox?
There's a lot of buffing tools. I have my airbrush is my main tool. I have a couple of airbrushes. Then I have a few actual spray brushes, and I have a compressor. Like, the compressor is probably the heart of the whole deal. So I have a large compressor, and that supplies air to everything. And then my brushes, probably more than enough sandpaper to last me for the rest of my life.
It's interesting that because here in Australia, I mean, I've been doing a little bit of woodwork. I can't find, or I find it very difficult to find, finer grits than 120, 160. And I imagine you're using stuff in the, 600s.
Yeah, well, 600 is even kind of coarse. I prefer to paint against 800 grit, but that's my preference, and it's because the scratch that leaves is a little bit finer. And I'm probably the only person that sees this, but if I clear coat something and I see a faint scratch like in the work, it drives me nuts. And it's probably something that only I see, but I will repaint something if I see a scratch, like like sand scratches.
So in the case of that sort of a situation, if you completely repaint something, do you go over the top or do you start from scratch?
It depends, I guess. Like, if it was a backplate, I might throw it away and start on a new one, because those back plates, that once the material gets too thick on it, the switch won't fit in the dock.
Right.
It just depends. Sometimes I'll sand them down. Sometimes I'll just toss them out and get a new shell.
Well, we've been talking about switches, especially because they're probably I imagine one of the more popular things you do, just because they're pretty versatile with different parts.
Yeah, they're the hot item right now.
Do you have one yourself?
I do. I was a little late to the game getting one. That my whole Switch ordeal was this guy, when I did that Super Nintendo theme, this guy asked me about it. He said, hey, have you messed with a Switch before? Can you do this Super Nintendo theme? I really like the Super Nintendo. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. I don't have a Switch, so it may take me a little while because I'll have to get it and take it apart and figure all that out. And so I did the Joy-Cons for him, and I mailed him out, and he was like, well, the one Joy-Con's acting a little weird. And so I decided I had to get a Switch so I could test this stuff.
Right.
And so I ended up getting one. And then it was actually a good buy, because it's one of the most fun things I've ever owned, I think.
I think I was saying to someone recently that I totally agree. Some consoles you buy so you can play specific games, But that one, you seem to buy games so you can play on that console because it's just so fun. And I think a big part of that is, like you said, it has lots of moving parts.
Yeah, it's just interesting. And my wife and I, that's what happened with us was I got it, and I was like, I've got this thing, and I'm probably not going to play with it. And then I got Mario Kart, and I was like, this is really fun. And so I was like, Sam, hey, check out Mario Kart. Just play a couple of games with me. And then she was like, this is really fun. And the fact that we could both have the little controller was just like, I don't know, it was just cool. And that we could take it wherever we wanted. Like, so if we were sitting somewhere, we could just break out a game of Mario Kart.
Oh, it's such a cool console. Do you have your own personalized, painted setup for yours?
Yeah, right now I'm rocking the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme on mine.
Okay, well that's a great plug. A little mini ad for the Nintendo Switch there. But why don't we plug some of your stuff? So obviously, I imagine you ship to Australia, no problems. I'm sure there's listeners out there. I'm sure very excited to pick up a piece. If someone wanted to pick up some of your work, where can they find you?
The best two places to contact me is either on Instagram at Doyle's Customs or on Etsy at Doyle's Customs.
Okay, awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much. Before I let you go, every time I get a guest on the show, radio shows, they tend to have some silly questions at the end, like, chocolate or strawberry, what's your favorite? I don't really like that because it doesn't fit with the whole theme. So I like to ask them about, sort of art and media, stuff that inspires them. And I use this as sort of a chance for the interview guests to come on and talk about a piece of art or media that they think is really powerful and it's really impactful to them, that came out in, say, like the last decade. So, say someone was completely out of the loop for the last 10 years. What's a piece of art or, like media, TV show, movie, album, anything that you would recommend, the must-have piece of art in the past 10 years, in your opinion?
Oh, man, because there's three different places that I like to tell people to look for artwork.
Right.
I guess, it has to be in the last decade, an artist from the last decade?
Oh, well, give or take.
My first place to tell somebody to go to look at fun artwork would be to look up Ed Roth.
Right.
And he did the Rat Fink artwork in the 1960s and 70s. And that would be my first place to tell somebody to go. Look at Ed Roth. But then my second place would, I guess if it had to be within the last 10 years, it would be Daniel Johnston. He does a lot of fun cartoon weirdness.
Awesome. It's always great to hear what different people will have to say about, impactful art for them in the last 10 years. Everyone has a really different answer. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you.
Big shout outs once again to Doyle from Doyle's Customs for coming on to the show. Like I said, it was a lot of fun. I had a great time. I've got everything, all of his social media links will be in the description below, as well as I've got the links for the various movies and, websites and artists that he mentioned, in case you wanted to quickly go and have a look. Thanks again for listening, and I'll be back next week. Until then, don't text and drive, and I'm out.